Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power will make you unstoppable. Not in the sense that it'll make you a fire-spitting dragon or a terrible human being, but it'll make you world smart. The law gives you the ability to know when there's a power play around you, so you're not a victim of it. And then it exposes you to the wisdom that people have used for ages so that you can use them for good. Here's what Ryan Holiday had to say about the 48 Laws of Power.
Ooh, the GOAT, Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Power. Some people think this book is immoral or controversial or whatever. To me, summarizing the 48 Laws in one sentence is know how power works so you can use it to do good and defend yourself from people who want to do bad. Critical book. You got to know it. And what I would add on top of this, if you think this book is not for you, if you are repulsed by it, if you're wary of it, you are precisely the person who needs to read it because you probably have a slightly naive or idealistic worldview that is setting you up to be exploited by other people.
There you go. So this is the beginning of a book series. I'm going over the 48 Laws of Power, one after the other, summarizing each law, which is especially useful if you've not read the book. But aside that, I'm also showing you the hidden wisdom in each law and how you can practically pick the wisdom from the book and apply them to live a more productive and successful life and achieve your goals, especially the career ones. Also partly because it's a difficult thing to do. And aside the fact that I like a challenge, I'm looking forward to how this helps me grow as well. Each law is split into 3 parts. There's a historical reference, which shows you where the law was obeyed and where it was transgressed and what the repercussion was in both cases. The second part is the lesson from the law, and the final part is the exception or reversal of the law, which is when not to obey the law. My summaries will touch on all 3 parts, and I will try to do 3 laws every week. Now that I said it, kind of sounds difficult. But let's see how it goes. That being said, let's dig in to the first law. Never outshine the master. And this makes 0 sense, right? At first, because if you work somewhere, for example, you assume that your superior or your masters want to see you shine. They want you to do your best work. They want you to be productive. I mean, why the hell else will they hire you? If they could do the thing for which they hired you, then they don't need you. So the fact that you're hired means that you're needed to shine in the specific thing that you were hired to do. So it makes sense to outshine the master because that's exactly what they hired you for. So when you say never outshine the master, I'm taken aback, like, okay. Explain what you mean. First off, who is a master? Based on my understanding of the law, here is my definition of a master. A master is a superior or anyone who can either help or be an obstruction on the path to your goal. Here is where Robert's ideas start to make sense, right? He says, and I quote, you must always make them feel comfortably superior, right? Don't go trying to overimpress them, else you risk attacking their ego. Now, when you bring the ego in, it makes total sense because everyone has an ego. To crystallize this, let's go through the historical reference. Nicolas Fouquet was a great friend and the finance minister to the King of France, Louis XIV. He was a very clever person and indispensable to the king. Now, when you have a finance minister that's indispensable, you know what that means. Anyway, he had hoped to be the next prime minister of France. So it was to his shock that after the current prime minister died, the king did not appoint him. Instead, he abolished the office. He just backspaced. Okay, now we don't need a prime minister. That was strange, right? And so he was like, have I fallen out of favor with the king? So in a bid to win back the king's favor, he threw the biggest party that France had ever seen. And this was to commemorate the completion of his chateau, which is the French word for mansion, and to pay tribute to the king, right? The most brilliant nobility of Europe and some of the greatest minds of the time were there. We're talking La Fontaine, La Rochefoucauld, Madame de Sévigné. Molière, the great French playwright, wrote a play for the occasion that he would perform himself around the evening closing. Food, we're talking 7-course dinner here, featuring foods from the Orient never before tasted in France. After dinner, there was a promenade tour through the chateau's garden, and the grounds and fountains of Vaux-le-Vicomte will turn out to be the inspiration for the king's palace. This was a lavish chateau, a lavish mansion. Fouquet personally walked the young king around so he could behold this perfect architecture, all in a bid to let him know that, hey, I am still well connected, I'm still that smart, intelligent guy, I'm still a person of value, and I'll still make a good ally, right? To fall back into favor with the king. But he achieved the opposite. He was arrested the next day by the king's head musketeer, and 3 months later he went on trial for stealing from the country's treasure, most of which he did on behalf of the king and with his permission. Fouquet was found guilty, and he spent the rest of his life, the last 20 years of his life, in solitary confinement. How did we get here? Let's back up a little bit. How did we go from 7-course dinners and poetry and fountains and pools and beautiful places to prison? Well, we can start with the fact that that party was the best that anyone had ever done in France, including the king. So no, the king did not think that that was cool. Nicholas must have been the talk of the country, maybe the talk of Europe. So no, again, that was not cool. How can anybody other than the king be the center of attraction? Nicholas wasn't proving his loyalty or quality. He was a threat. And what do we do to threats? You see, that's why you can study, do anything you want, but you must understand psychology, money, and how to navigate both. At least the basics, right? Because if you do not know how to deal with people and resources intelligently, you will be a victim a lot. Never trigger fear and insecurities in the people above you, or they may never let you rise, right? Alex Omozi says it in a very interesting way. He says, people want you to be better, but not, you know what? Let's hear it from him.
When you're on your way up, everyone roots for you because you remind them of their dreams. When you're at the top, everyone tears you down because you remind them that they gave up on them. For anyone who needs a reminder, no one is going to hate on you for doing worse than them.
People want you to do well, but not better than them.
If there's a chance that someone might harm you, you must never hand them the tools to do it. What Nicholas did was like, it's like someone wants to get rid of you and you give the person a loaded gun. What do you think they'll do with it? The fact that the king abolished an office that was meant for you should have been signal enough to tread carefully and tread with wisdom, but you didn't. Never imagine that you can do anything that you want because the master loves you. That's how Nicholas died. I mean, in the real sense of the corporate world right now, it's unlikely that someone will chop your head off or throw you in prison or banish you, any of that kind of stuff. It'll more likely be passive aggressive, right? So they may come across new opportunities that are good for you and not tell you about it. Or they'll have a chance to recommend you and they wouldn't do it. Or they'll find a new way, an easier way to do the work that you do, or something, or a resource that might help you and just not tell you, right? Because they are threatened by you. So what do? Not shine? No, you should shine, but shine with sense. Don't take all the glory, give them some. Oh, I did well because this person showed me this. Oh, that was successful with the support of this person, right? Share the credit. Instead of being threatened by you, they will feel like they're part of your success and you won't come off as arrogant. They'll continue to help you to grow, and that's what you want. If there's someone with the capacity to help you or take you out, you want them to be doing the first and not the second, right? So take your flowers, but hand some over. That way, you will keep your head and you'll continue to grow, and that's what you want. So here's a closing story. Way back in Italy, scientist Galileo was in a tough spot. He needed resources and support for his research. Now, like most artists of the Renaissance, he would make gifts of his inventions and research and hand them over to the leading patrons of the time. One time, for instance, he presented the military compass that he had invented to the Duke of Gonzaga and dedicated the book that explains how to use the compass to the Medicis, for which both rulers were grateful, and through them he found more students to teach, but they always paid him in gifts and not cash, no matter how great his invention was. And because of this, he couldn't make progress as fast as he would have wanted to, so there must be an easier way, he thought. In 1610, Galileo had just discovered the 4 moons of Jupiter, so this time he changed his strategy. Instead of dividing this discovery amongst his patrons, which he would typically do, so for example, he could give one the telescope he used, dedicate a book to another one, and so on, for which they would hand him gifts. Again, he decided to not do that and focus on the most powerful family, the Medicis. He did this because shortly after Cosimo I had established the Medici dynasty, he made Jupiter, the mightiest of the gods, the Medici symbol, a symbol that went beyond politics and banking, one that was linked to ancient Rome and its divinities. Galileo took this initiative and turned his discovery into a cosmic event. He said that the bright stars, speaking of the 4 moons of Jupiter, offered themselves in the heavens to his telescope at the same time as Cosimo II's enthronement, and that the 4 moons harmonized with the number of the Medicis, referring to Cosimo and his 3 brothers, and that the moons orbited Jupiter as the 4 suns revolved around Cosimo I. More than coincidence, he showed that the heavens themselves reflected on the ascendants of the Medici family. The story became big, not just amplifying Galileo's discovery, but bringing honor to the Medici family. He made an emblem representing Jupiter sitting on a cloud with the 4 stars circling around him and presented it to Cosimo II. For a scientist, this was the coup of a lifetime. Changed the game. In that same year, he was made the official court philosopher and mathematician with a salary. So his days of begging and patronage were over. Did he get his flowers? Of course he did, without inspiring fear and insecurity in the master, I might add. You see, the world is full of masters. You have and will continue to have them at one stage or another throughout your life. Some will love you, some may not. You will be wise to study them and learn how to deal with them. And that's it for our first law. I hope you learned something. Never outshine the master. If you don't mind, please let me know how I did. And if you hit subscribe, that means I will see you